Newswatch was a trailblazing magazine founded in January 1985 by Dele Giwa, Ray Ekbu, Dan Agbese, and Yakubu Mohammed. Giwa was its editor-in-chief and chief executive officer. He had left his position as the editor of Moshood Abiola's Sunday Concord to create Newswatch after one too many editorial battles with his larger-than-life boss. Newswatch initially enjoyed a cordial relationship with the Babangida government and was perceived as a slightly right-of-center publication. In the early days of the magazine, it published positive appraisals of the Babangida government. Giwa was initially considered as a reporter with a close view in the inner workings of the government. In his early days, Babangida was keen to build friendly bridges with reporters. His trusted confidant and head of the National Security Organization NSO, Brigadier Aliyu Mohammed, regularly held briefings with reporters. While he was seeking to expand the government's network of press contacts, Brigadier Mohammed reached out to Giwa on the recommendation of Dr. Stanley Masebu, managing director of the Guardian newspaper, who identified Giwa as a rising star. Giwa was so highly regarded that Babangida granted him an interview in the November 1985 issue of Newswatch. Giwa was well connected. He had access to and was trusted enough to be granted an interview with the head of state. So, what went wrong? How did a famous trailblazing journalist who had worked for the country's richest man and who had the ears of the head of national security end up on bad terms with the government he was courting? Reporters and newspaper editors did not seem to realize that the government's regular contact with them served an ulterior purpose. They did not immediately appreciate that the head of national security did not brief them purely for altruistic reasons. The government's regular contact with members of the press allowed them to observe and monitor the disposition of individual editors from close quarters and identify critical sections of the press. Newswatch's troubles with the federal military government started in 1986 when the Directorate of Military Intelligence (DMI) summoned Giwa for questioning. The DMI claimed that Giwa had a copy of the Special Military Tribunal's judgment in the Vasa coup case and that Giwa wanted to publish the judgment in Newswatch. On September 19, 1986, Giwa was again called in for questioning by the intelligence services, this time by the State Security Service, after publishing a story on the FMG's introduction of a second-tier foreign exchange market. Giwa was interrogated by Lieutenant Colonel Ajibola Tunde Togun, Deputy Director General of the SSS. He was also questioned by police officers, including Deputy Inspector General of Police Victor Pam, Felix Musa, Emmanuel Ngowe, and Lekon Salami. In October 1986, Giwa was again called in for questioning by the SSS at their headquarters on 15 Awolowo Road in Ikoyi, Lagos. He gave a statement to two senior SSS members, namely Mrs. Aliyu and Adeniyi Jones. Giwa attended with his colleague Ray Ekbu. Ekbu was asked to stand outside while Giwa was ushered into the office of the security-conscious and gregarious Lieutenant Colonel Togun. Giwa was subjected to a barrage of hostile questioning and 4 serious allegations were made against him, accusing him of planning to import arms into Nigeria in order to cause social unrest and destabilize the government, colluding with socialist student unions to plan a socialist revolution in Nigeria, preparing a feature article on the exit of former CGS Ebitu Ikiwe. Togun told Giwa he was unhappy with the story since strong ethnic sentiment still shrouded Ukiwe's controversial exit. Promising to defend Aluzi Ugugwaja, a police superintendent and public relations officer of the Lagos State Police Command, who was suspended after some run-ins with the authorities, and a statement he made alleging that Nigerian soldiers plan coups because they are idle. Giwa's telephone had been bugged by the DMI, and the DMI intercepted his phone conversations with Ogbuaja. The accusations led to a heated exchange of words between Giwa and Togun that deteriorated into a shouting match. Giwa was also questioned on the gun-running issue by Ismail Agwarzu, Director General of the SSS, and police officer Zachary Biu, who later became infamous for his brutal exploits during the Abacha regime. Giwa was so shocked by the accusations that he confided his concerns to his colleague Ekbu. He told Ekpu, "If they think this of me, then I am not safe. They are only trying to give a dog a bad name in order to hang it." The same day, Giwa also reported the matter to acclaimed human rights lawyer Gani Fawemi. Giwa's wife Olufumilayo received a call from someone in the office of Colonel Haliru Akilu, director of the DMI, who asked for her husband. After being told by Fumi that Giwa was not in, the caller took Giwa's office number from Fumi. A few minutes later, the same caller telephoned again and connected Fumi to Colonel Akilu, who asked for Giwa's home address and a physical description of his house. When Fumi asked why he needed the address, Akilu replied that Babangida's ADC would come by later to drop off an item for Giwa and that he planned to stop over himself. Fumi had spoken to Akilu on previous occasions and thus knew his voice. Kayode Soyinka, Newswatch London's bureau chief, was present when this conversation took place, and he confirmed that he heard Fumi describing Giwa's house to Akilu and asking whether Akilu was going to visit. Akilu later claimed at a press conference 2 days later that he wanted to visit Giwa to prove a Hausa adage that if you visit someone in his house, you show him you are really a friend. He never did visit. Akilu had a separate 10-minute telephone conversation with Giwa in the morning, during which he assured Giwa that the gun-running allegation had been dropped. This conversation took place 40 minutes before the arrival of 2 unscheduled visitors to Giwa's house. That same morning, Giwa's security guard, Malam Musa Ladan, had left to go to the markets but asked his neighbor, Malam Musa Zibu, to keep watch while he was away. At 11 a.m., 2 men in a white Peugeot 504 saloon car arrived outside Giwa's house. One of them was wearing a white suit and the other wearing a black suit. The man wearing the white suit left the car and handed a parcel in a brown hand-stitched and padded envelope to Malam Zibu. After confirming that Giwa was in, he asked Zibu to give the parcel to Giwa. Having handed over the parcel, the 2 men drove off without waiting to confirm that Giwa had received it. Giwa's 19-year-old son, Billy, collected the parcel from Zibu. Billy said that the parcel was heavy and bore a white sticker with Dele Giwa's name and address written on it. The sticker also bore the Nigerian coat of arms and an inscription from the office of the C&C. It was also marked secret and confidential and warned that it should only be opened by the addressee. Having received a similar parcel in the past for his father from the president, Billy handed over the parcel to his father, Dele, who was in his study with his colleague, Kayode Soyinka. Billy went back to the living room to join his stepmother, Fumi. According to Soyinka, when Giwa received the parcel, he commented, "This must be from the president." As Giwa opened the parcel, a huge explosion ripped through his study, badly wounding him and Soyinka. The force of the blast threw Soyinka across the study and impaired his hearing for 5 years. The study was engulfed in flames. The heat from the explosion was so intense that it burned some of Giwa's clothing onto his skin. With the help of sympathizers, Giwa was bundled into a Volkswagen car, still alive but critically wounded. He was driven to First Foundation Hospital, 10 kilometers away in Ikeja, where he died from his injuries. He was buried at his ancestral village, Ugbeke Ikperi, near Auchi in Edo State, on November 8, 1986. The CGS Admiral Aikomu and Minister of Information Tony Momo promised an investigation. Aikomu promised that we shall leave no stone unturned in our efforts to find the truth. Assistant Commissioner of Police Abubakar Tav was placed in charge of the investigation. The police interrogated and took statements from several people close to Giwa, including his ex-wife, Florence Itagiwa, and a Mr. G. Komunataros, chairman of Nigerian Flour Mills Limited, who had threatened legal action against Giwa for publishing articles criticizing his company. At one point, Musa Zibo, the man who handed over the parcel to Giwa's son Billy, picked out Florence Itagiwa's driver Olufemi Olukaye as the man who gave him the parcel. However, Olukaye was discharged after interrogation and a search of his house failed to find any incriminating evidence. The police accepted it was a case of mistaken identity. Tav's attempt to interrogate Akilu, Togun, and Gwazu hit a dead end. Tav later said, "It was therefore desirable that Colonel A.K. Togun who was the second in command at the SSS, and Colonel Akilu, who was the DMI, make statements giving their own version of the story. They did not submit themselves for interrogation, let alone write statements to the police. Throughout my investigation, I was unable to reach Colonels H. Akilu and A.K. Togun for interrogation in view of the positions they held. Alhaji Ismail Agwarzu, who was the Director General of SSS, could not be reached or interrogated for the same reason. They were untouchable. Tav filed a report to his boss and CID leader, Deputy Inspector General of Police Chris Omeben, recommending that Akilu and Togun to be interrogated and their residences and offices be searched soon thereafter. Tav was withdrawn from the case and posted to Benin to investigate an armed robbery case. However, human rights lawyer Gani Fahimi refused to let the matter die. In November 1986, Fahimi applied to Lagos State's Director of Public Prosecutions, James WHODUNNIT, for a private prosecution of Akilu and Togun for murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The matter lingered in the court system with appeals and counter-appeals. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, where Fahimi's application was eventually granted in 1987 and the prosecution ordered. When the matter returned to the High Court, Akilu and Togun did not appear and the case was dismissed. In between, Akilu and Togun launched a successful defamation action against Fahimi, as a result of which Fahimi was ordered to pay 6 million naira compensation to them. Fahimi was arrested and imprisoned several times. When the Oputa panel was inaugurated in 2000, Fahimi petitioned it to summon Babangida, Akilu, and Togun. All three refused to appear but were represented by their counsel, Clement Akpambo, who was the Minister of Justice and Attorney General in Babangida's government. They managed to obtain a High Court order restraining the panel from summoning them. Their counsel for the High Court order was the esteemed Chief Rotimi Williams. Nonetheless, Fahimi emotionally appeared before the panel with a photograph of Giwa's mutilated corpse and declared, "This is what Babangida did. This is what Akilu did. This is what Togun did." Fahimi alleged that Giwa was murdered as he was working on a sensational story linking a drug courier named Gloria Okon with the wives of his senior military officers. Fahimi claimed that the bombing was a warning to Newswatch editors to drop the story. Okon had been arrested in 1985 at Aminu Kano International Airport in Kano in possession of several kilograms of cocaine while trying to board a flight to Europe. Okon later died mysteriously in police custody. The Buhari regime, then in power, appointed a Judicial Commission of Inquiry to investigate the matter under the judge, Canis Umbano. But Buhari was overthrown before the Judicial Commission could submit its report. The report was eventually submitted to Buhari's successor, Babangida, in September 1985, within 1 month after Buhari's overthrow. It is not known what became of the reports. However, the year before, the Oputa panel, Newswatch editorial staff and management denied planning to publish the story on Gloria Okon. Newswatch Deputy CEO Yakubu Mohammed said that, "To the best of my knowledge, Dele Giwa was not involved in the investigation of the Gloria Okon story." Mohammed admitted that during an editorial meeting, a Newswatch reporter named Bose Lasaki had suggested running a story on Okon regarding a rumor that Okon did not really die but was secretly flown abroad. Mohammed, however, said the story was dropped and never published for lack of substance, as there was no story in it. When asked to comment on Okon's case, the normally frank retired army officer and the former emir of Gwandu, Mustafa Jokolo, retreated and replied, "I don't know. Ask people who investigated Gloria Okon. Who were the people behind it and what happened? But I don't know. I don't want to go missing too. Don't bring me into that, please. This is too hot to handle. It's too hot to handle." So, who killed Dele Giwa? Fahimi and many members of the public believe that the government and its security agencies were responsible. However, this belief requires an examination of whether experienced military intelligence officers trained in the art of evasion and subterfuge would be naive enough to telephone on their victim and ask him for his address before killing him, then send him a parcel bomb with the return address label indicating who sent the parcel. Kilu himself later said, "I'm a trained man. If there were any sinister moves, I could have asked someone else to tell me his address. I wouldn't have been stupid enough to phone his wife 2 times and keep telling her that I am the one phoning." There are further curious twists to the saga that may or may not have merits. In an interview in the October 23, 1993 edition of the Tell magazine, one Edmond Kechukwu Onyema claimed that he was an accessory to Giwa's death. Onyema alleged that he was a former DMI operative and that after Giwa's death, he and others involved in it were promised new identities if they left the army. Onyema claimed that he was dismissed after refusing to leave the army. Newswatch also subsequently received an anonymous handwritten confession dated November 3, 1986, from a police officer who also claimed to be an accessory to Giwa's murder. The letter identified 2 police officers at a police station in Ilukpeju who supposedly knew Giwa's killers. Despite the fact that most of the principal witnesses and government ministers at the time are still alive, Giwa's murder remains unsolved. However, it was a watershed moment for relations between the Nigerian government and people. For the first time, Nigerians became scared of their own government.